Hi, this is Mark J. Ryan, and welcome to Brainwashing Central, where we will explore through common sense how brainwashing, propaganda, hypnosis, priming, subliminals, NLP, and other modalities are being used to shape yours and others' behaviors. Hey everybody, this is Mark J. Ryan for BrainwashingCentral.com. This is part 4 of my conversation on brainwashing. As promised, I have book in hand. The name of the book, as you'll see on the screen, it's probably a different cover. This is a 2005 version. David Kupelian, I hope I'm saying that right. The book is The Marketing of Evil: How Radicals, Elitists, and Pseudo-Experts Sell Us Corruption Disguised as Freedom. How Radicals, Elitists, and Pseudo-Experts Sell Us Corruption Disguised as Freedom. So there's some of the books. I'm going to read through it. What I'll do is I'll probably have some spaces in between that I will edit out. You won't know that, so it'll be jumping back and forth. But the main chapter is chapter 1, which sets the premise for the other chapters. It goes into how, and this isn't the only book on that I've got. I've got some great propaganda books from the 1950s. One in particular, and some other articles, books that I'm going to be going through that really get deep into this subject specifically. But I highly recommend you get this book and read it for yourself. It'll support what I'm saying. It'll also give you more depth of information and concentration as you go through it on its own. But here's basically where the propaganda has been being used and will continue to be used. And this book basically is coming from a conservative Christian type viewpoint. So, but it doesn't discount the knowledge of what they've put in there of how this technology is being done. And the premise and the frame of this podcast is how brainwashing is being used. And it's been used by both sides. But right now, the left, and I would say the extreme left, liberalism, not the classic liberals that I remember growing up, but liberalism, the new liberalism, the politically correct, nasty liberalism. First chapter 1 that I'll be going into now is Marketing Blitz, Selling Gay Rights to America. Chapter 2 is Buying the Big Lie, the Myth of Church-State Separation. Killer Culture, Who's Selling Sex and Rebellion to Your Children? Multicultural Madness, How Western Culture Was Turned Upside Down in One Generation. Family Meltdown, The Campaign to Destroy Marriage, Obsessed with Sex, How Fraudulent Science Unleashed a Catastrophic, I can't even pronounce it right. My brain is starting to, I've been going like crazy. Anyways, Catastrophic Revolution, Sabotaging Our Schools, How Radicals Have Hijacked America's Education System. The Media Matrix, How the Press Creates the World of Illusion we think is real. Chapter 9, Blood Confessions, How Lying Marketers Sold America an Unrestricted Abortion. And last, Best Hope, The Fall and Rise of American Christianity. So, again, it's coming from this perspective. If you can't handle it, goodbye. You might as well leave now because nothing's going to change your mind. If you're a real student of brainwashing, then it doesn't matter what side or where you're getting the information. The important part is to bring it back to a neutral zone. Electricity, it can turn a person into toast or it can turn bread into toast for your breakfast. So the process and the power of electricity, the study of electricity is what's important. How does it work? If we want to argue about how electricity is bad because it fries people, or like the Amish think it's of the devil, and I could be wrong about that. Or do you want to use it to make some toast? Do you want to use it to make something in your oven using electricity, or run a blender, or do a podcast using a microphone and a recording interface in a computer software? It's up to you. But so anyways, Marketing Blitz, since the issue of the day is gay rights, and they are absolutely, the gay community in America is the wealthiest subset of Americans.
that group, they don't have kids, so they don't usually have to spend a lot. I mean, most of them don't have kids. They're usually very intelligent and have a aptitude for selling, getting the job done, highly motivated, so they make a lot of money. And they're the highest paid group, so they can afford the best lawyers, the best marketers, the best propagandists in the world. And we're going to get into a little bit about what's happening. And when I go I'm looking again at the extreme aspect of it. Most gay people that I know, I've got some really good friends that I love that are gay, that are just wonderful human beings. And I don't put that on them. There's some that I know kind of half-assed that it's just like, whoa, I don't want to know these people any more than I already do. And I could see that attitude creeping through. And I don't have to argue my point. I just have the right of conscience in America to say I don't want anything to do with you. Not as a group of people or because of who you are, just because you're an asshole. So this is the extreme version of pushing an agenda. And if my friends have benefited by people leaving them alone, I like that aspect of it. If they're happier because they got married, I like that aspect of it, that they're married. I don't like the agenda. And this is part of what this process does, and this marketing blitz that we're going to get into. They don't want to make those distinctions, because in normal conversation between friends, you go like, yeah, no, here's the part that I don't like. And the people can say, well, the Jehovah's Witness, I don't like them knocking at the door. The Mormons knocking at my door. I agree with you. I don't like that either. To me, the version of Christianity is one where I see somebody as a spiritual person and I go, wow, you've got something amazing. Tell me more about it. I want to go after them. I want to know a little bit more about what they're doing and how they're doing it and their love for God. And how can I learn that? How can I learn more of that? I don't want to necessarily push that on somebody. That doesn't mean the Jehovah's Witnesses. I've known some beautiful, beautiful people that are Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. Wonderful people. I don't have anything against them. However, I can say I don't like the fact that you come knock at my door and I'm Saturday morning and I'm dressed in my underwear and I don't want to have to answer the door and I haven't invited you and why are you at my door? I say the same thing about the guy that selling something or, the guy next door saying, hey, I'm going to move my truck here or I'm going to use your driveway. No, just don't do that to me. To have some consideration. Make it at least 9 in the morning. You start chainsawing at 6 in the morning, it's not very nice. So I'm looking again at the fairness and the equality of it. Their lives are benefited by it. I'm glad. They're not harassed as much. They have a little bit more freedom. I'm glad. But at what cost? And we have to split hairs here. We have to say if it's going to be hijacked and at what cost, okay? And so this is the main distinction that I want to make. So the marketing blitz selling gay rights in America. I'm going to go through it, and I've got some points that I want to bring up, but basically the first part of it I can it's about a congressman that was Republican, that was big-time anti-gay, and then his name was Bauman, and he turns out to be frequenting prostitutes and male prostitutes, and then got caught and came out. But he had been sexually abused when he was younger, and it kind of goes into his process and mental mindset and the trauma that he's going through. So it really, kind of takes pity on people, even though he was anti-gay. What was the bottom line and what was his process? What did he go through in there to get a better understanding of what's happening with gay Americans? So, and then it kind of goes into today, thanks to the politically correct, gay-friendly culture, millions of human beings in the grip of the same unnatural sexual compulsion find it much easier to accept, even to wear as a badge of honor. But they still don't understand it. In fact, they have less desire than ever to understand it, just as the larger society has lost interest in understanding homosexuality. But sometimes not knowing what you're dealing with can be dangerous. So let's take off the rainbow-colored glasses and objectively explore the phenomena we call gay rights. It grew out of sexual liberation the sexual liberation movement in the 1960s. To be precise, June 11th, 1969, Stonewall riot, when a group of homosexuals in New York City Stonewall Inn resisted police commands to disperse, is widely regarded as the birth of gay liberation movement. So that's June 11th, 1969, a little over, well, June 28th or something like that, but this is 79, 89, 99, 2009, 46 years. The emerging political force made considerable strides during the 70s, most notably in persuading, many say intimidating, the American Psychiatric Association in 1973 into removing homosexuality from its official list of mental disorders. Okay, so that's the first thing, is to say, okay, they're in there as a mental disorder. If you feel like you're born that way, if it's a lifestyle choice, I can see how that could be upsetting that it's in the DSM, I don't know what, but the American Psychiatric Association in 1973, because of pressure from these groups, removed homosexuality from its official list of mental disorders. And basically, the DSM is a bunch of doctors getting together and agreeing on certain things. But I am curious, and I don't know, why was it considered a mental disorder? I would like to know a little bit more. But gay rights was young, inexperienced, underfunded, understaffed, and political movements go. The issue received little support from politicians or the nation in general. Equality for gays was not yet a phrase that reverberated in the hearts and the minds of America. Then came AIDS. So this goes into a little bit about the idea of how AIDS just really devastated the movement. It really, it scared a lot of people. I remember going through that period of time, and I was in Dallas during a high period of time where people had no understanding of it. And, like today when you see these, people saying, oh, Ebola's here in the United States, and we see what it does in Africa, people freak out. They don't know, they don't have enough information. How is it spread? How is it not spread? Everybody say, oh, no, it's spread this way or it's spread that way. But when which I did, I was working in the restaurant industry, and there was a guy that came in and knew him fairly well and treated him well, and he was friendly, and he'd bring his friends in, but he had AIDS, and then I think it's sarcoma or something like that. He started getting the red spots all over his face and his body, and actually one of my friends when I got out of college with, I didn't know at that time, but his brothers were all police officers, but he ended up being gay. So, my first roommate down in Texas, there was two of us, and one of them was gay. And I won't go into any of those stories there. So I had another friend, I'll tell you a story, where I was at a seminar. It was one of John Overder's years ago in Lancaster, PA. And one of the guys was from England, and he asked, if we wanted a room together to split costs. And I'm like, absolutely. And had no idea he was gay, no idea. And so people started saying, "Are you gay, Mark? I thought you were straight." And I'm like, well, "Yeah, I'm straight. Why are you asking me if I'm gay?" And they're going, "Well, you're rooming with Rob." And I'm like, "Is Rob gay?" And they all start laughing. "Yeah, you didn't know that? He's gay as can be." And I'm like, "No, I didn't have a clue." To me, he was just a great guy, a good friend. I used to continue to stay with him. Actually, another friend of mine, Paul from Denver, came in, and he needed a room, and I said, "Hey, I'm staying with Rob, and you want to move in?" I said, "I'm going to let you know he's gay," because I didn't know he goes, "I don't have an issue with that." And so we got it. There were big rooms. It was an old Marriott, I think, hotel, but the rooms were huge. So there was two like king size beds, and then we had a rollaway that almost had its own room. There's some funny stories with what happened during that stay with the people that were next door, because we could hear what they were talking about. And Rob, his laugh was contagious, and we'd get laughing, things like that. Anyway, so if his life is better, I'm happy for that. I don't know how many times people have said to me, he's gay. And I'm like, no, I had no freaking idea. Again, like my friend early on, they'd call him sissy back then and things, because, gay wasn't a thing that we knew about at that point. But same thing in the military. One of my black friends, he was just gay as could be, and they would just the blacks in the Army were much worse than the whites. The whites were nice to him and kind of talk. But the blacks, they hated the fact that he was gay and really were threatened by it. And the nastiest comments came from the blacks in the military against this guy. But he introduced me to some really cool books. Dwell Around Two Planets by Philo, some of the New Thought movement stuff. And he was roommated with another guy that was a really tall guy. And he was extremely intelligent because we were in an intelligence division of mixed in. I worked as a generator operator, but we were a signal battalion that had real high-level intelligence, secure post. And so these guys were super, super smart and had access, secure access that, basically a lot of, I don't think the vice president even had. I think president and then some generals and then them for a signal battalion. And the intelligence that was in the vault is what they called it. He was basically treated pretty well. And I knew he was very effeminate, so I had a sense that he was, but to me it wasn't a big issue. Some things have happened to me personally from not so nice gays that I may get into. I was actually kidnapped one time and almost killed, threatened, and left on the side of I will get into that at a future time. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But considering that and my, I would say my stance and my friendship with gays to say not to hold that against them. And several things like that similar have happened. And go back to Catholic schools and some people that I know, some friends of mine, what they went through. So we'll leave that be for now. And but basically, so out of the sexual liberation came that movement. Then they changed it from the American Psychiatric Situation. So it became into Equality for AIDS. But then comes AIDS. AIDS devastated. Everybody became afraid of it. I think the story I was telling you, we're in Dallas and I was working. I remember one time in a restaurant. We were eating. And we weren't eating, but this gay guy that I knew that came in, and he was eating dinner there. And when he left, the manager of the restaurant said, "Grab the silverware." And so I grabbed the silverware, and I went and I said, "What's the deal?" He goes, "He's got AIDS." And I said, "What do you want to do? You want to put it right in the steam bath and run it through a couple times or something to kill the germs?" And he just sat there. He didn't know what to do, and he said, "Throw it away. I can't take that chance. We don't know what is going on with this, and I don't want to spread it to any other customers." And so I threw the silverware away. Right now, you can look back and say, "Oh, that was ignorant. Oh, that was..." No. At that point in time, we didn't have a fricking clue what was going on with AIDS. So the idea of, serving people, treating them nice, being around them, but still there was a concern like, is this possible to catch? Is this possible? We didn't know. And again, you're talking... Oh, man, I don't even know, 80s, somewhere in the 80s. I'd have to think more on it. So anyways, then because of what was going on with AIDS, there was a group that came out called ACT UP. They called themselves the Defiant Stormtroopers of in-your-face tactics of ACT UP. You got that Dan Savage guy. He's like kind of a leftover ACT UP, in your face, really belligerent, really just, to me, a shithead, and deserves what he gets. But he's nasty, nasty. The ACT UP stood for AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, may or not have been successful in pressing for federal government to increase the commitment to combating AIDS. But such tactics definitely were successful in giving activist homosexuals a very bad name. One famous incident was the assault on New York's famed St. Patrick's Cathedral on December 10th, 1989, while Cardinal John O'Connor presided over a 10:15 Sunday morning mass. A multitude of pro-choice and gay rights advocates protested angrily outside. Some, wearing gold-colored robes similar to clerical vestments, hoisted a large portrait of a pornographic, altered, frontal nude portrait of Jesus. Nice people. "You bigot, O'Connor, you're killing us," screamed one protester, while signs called the Archbishop a murderer. Then it got really ugly. Scores of protesters entered the church, resulting in what many in the packed house of parishioners described as a nightmare. The radical homosexuals turned a celebration of the Holy Eucharist into a screaming babble of sacrilege by standing in the pews, excuse me, shouting and waving their fists, tossing condoms in the air, recounted the New York Post. One of the invaders grabbed a consecrated wafer and threw it on the ground. Outside demonstrators, many of them members of ACT UP, carried placards that summed up their sentiments towards the Catholic Church. Keep your church out of my crotch. Keep your rosaries off my ovaries. Eternal life of Cardinal John O'Connor now. Eternal life to Cardinal John O'Connor now. Curb your dogma. Clearly, the young movement was flirting with oblivion if it persisted in such ugly, indefensible tactics. It needed a new, more civilized direction if ever hoped to convince Americans that homosexuality was a perfectly normal alternative lifestyle. The new direction would somehow have to convert the fearsome AIDS epidemic from a negative into a positive. What was needed was a comprehensive long-term public relations campaign that had to be brilliantly conceived and skillfully executed. I'll take a quick drink of water here. It's very hot here in Shasta. It's been high 90s, 100, and the humidity's up, which is unusual for Shasta. Usually it's very, very low humidity, almost desert in the summertime here, but the humidity's been up and it's pretty uncomfortable. Some Mount Shasta water. Best in the world. If you're up here, come and taste it. Okay, let me see if I can find out where I was here. Okay. In February 1988, some 175 leading activists representing homosexual groups from across the nation held a war conference in Warrenton, Virginia, to map out their movement's future. Shortly thereafter, activists Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen put into book form the comprehensive public relations plan they had been advocating with their gay rights peers for years. Kirk and Madsen were not the kind of drooling activists that would burst into churches and throw condoms in the air. They were smart guys, very smart. Kirk, a Harvard-educated researcher in neuropsychiatry, worked with the Johns Hopkins study of mathematically precocious youth and designed aptitude tests for adults with 200-plus IQs. Think about that. You're designing a test for 200-plus IQs. Madsen, with a doctorate in politics from Harvard, was an expert on public persuasion tactics and social marketing. Together, they wrote After the Ball, How America Will Conquer Its Fear and Hatred of Gays in the 90s. So this started back in the late 80s, and their book was about how America will conquer its fears and hatred of gays in the 90s. As cynical as it may seem, they explained at the outset, AIDS gives us a chance, however brief, to establish ourselves as a victimized minority, legitimately deserving American special protection and care. At the same time, they warned, it generates mass hysteria of precisely the sort that has brought about public stonings and leper colonies since the Dark Ages and before. How can we maximize the sympathy and minimize the fear? How, given the horrid hand of AIDS has dealt us, can we best play it? The bottom line of Kirk and Madsen's master plan. The campaign we outlined in this book through complex depends centrally upon a program of unabashed propaganda, firmly grounded in long-established principles of psychology and advertising. Arguing that skillfully handled, the AIDS epidemic could conquer American resistance to homosexuality and form the basis of a comprehensive long-term marketing campaign to sell gay rights to straight Americans. After the Ball became the public relations Bible of the movement. So this is a game plan. This is not just something that happened in the natural course of evolution of people. This was something that was planned and manipulated under propaganda. Kirk and Madsen war goal, explained marketing expert Paul E. Rondo from the Regent University, was to force acceptance of homosexual culture into the mainstream, to silence opposition, and ultimately to convert American society. In his comprehensive study, Selling Homosexuality to America, Rondo writes, the extensive three-stage strategy to desensitize, jam, and convert the American public is reminiscent of George Orwell's premise of good think and bad think in 1984. As Kirk and Madsen put it, to one extent or another, the separability and the manipulability of the verbal label is the basis for all the abstract principles underlying our proposed campaign. Separability, manipulability. Allow me to translate this psychological marketing jargon. We can change what people actually think and feel by breaking their current negative associations with our cause and replacing them with positive associations. Simple case in point. Homosexual activists call their movement gay rights. This accomplishes two major objectives. Number one, use of the word gay rather than homosexual masks the controversial sexual behavior involved and accentuates instead of vague but positive sounding culture identity, gay, which after all once meant happy. And two, describing their battle from the get-go as one over rights implies homosexuals are denied the basic freedoms of citizenship that others enjoy. So merely using the term gay rights and persuading politicians and the media to adopt this terminology, activists seeking to transform America have framed the terms of the debate in their favor almost before the contest begins. This is public. This is not just and then public relations warfare. It's not just public relations warfare. It's NLP. It's marketing. It's advertising. It's debate. It's everything. He or she who frames the debate almost always wins. The abortion rights movement has prevailed in that war precisely because it succeeded early on in framing the debate as a question not of abortion, but of choice. So you never get to abortion. You never get to abortion because you got to talk about choice. And beyond choice, there's just not a choice. We can't even look at that because choice is the first frame, which blocks the second frame. That's me. The abortion vanguard correctly anticipated that it would be far easier to defend an abstract, positive-sounding idea like choice than the unrestricted slaughter of unborn babies. You know, the great thing about that, too, is you find out now that the lady that Roe versus Wade, she actually is now a born-again Christian and came out and said she was never pregnant in the first place. That was all a ruse. That was all a setup to get that passed. But the deal was to keep it quiet for all that time. They didn't want people to know that because that might change their minds. But once it got past a certain point and it was already implemented and everybody just kind of accepted it in society. But now with choice, with birth, with life, pro-life, it's now changing. And that's one of the things they're nervous about is because there has been enough kids that have grown up that known that there could have been brothers and sisters as if in a war were gone. And so that there's something going on with the younger generation where they are not necessarily liking it. Not that they want to take it away or stop it, but they're not for it. They realize that there's been a cost. That's my opinion. And if you don't like it, oh well. Okay, you might be wondering, even granting the movement's cutting-edge marketing savvy, how do you settle middle America on those 500 sex partners and weird sexual practices? Answer, according to Kirk and Madsen, you don't. You just talk about it. I think it was earlier, and I'm not sure if we're going to get into it, but earlier it talked about that the average homosexual at that time, male, had an average of about 500 sex partners. So how do you sell middle America on the 500 sex partners and weird sexual practices? Answer, according to Kirk and Madsen, you don't. Just don't talk about it. Rather, look and act as normal as possible for the camera. So everything that is negative will not show up. And if you got the media to go along with it and you're in the media and they're for you, the conscious parallelism, do not show anything bad. Do not show pictures from the gay parades anymore. The gay parades used to really set people off. They would be disgusted by the gay parades. And I remember as I was younger, people just would be totally disgusted. It'd be on the news, and it'd be just, people say this is disgusting. So we don't show it anymore. We don't show what's really happening. We only show the positive side. We don't show the negative side. Any of this sound a little familiar? Rather, look and act as normal as possible for the camera. When you're very different and people hate you for it, they explain, this is what you do. First, you get your foot in the door by being as similar as possible. Okay? So there's similar and difference. So the differences become obvious. This is me talking. The differences become obvious. And people do not want to be associated with people that are very different than them. So you have to sort by similarity. It's genius. I mean, this is NLP stuff. It's a meta program called Similar Difference. It's not exactly called that. I call it that. What's similar? Sameness, difference. What's similar about these objects and what's different about these objects? And you can find where somebody is. And people have proclivities for ways of thinking. They think about similar stuff. So if I put 3 coins down and I put a nickel, a penny, and a quarter, and the similar people, I'll say, what's similar about this? Well, they're all coins. They're all American coins. And if somebody's a difference person, what's the relationship with these coins? Nothing. There's nothing the same about them. Look at the different sizes. One's big, one's medium sized, one's small. That one's 25 cents. That one's a nickel. That one's a penny. That one's copper. These two, one's nickel, one's silver copper. So they see differences in it. Well, we think like that in patterns. Okay, so similar and difference. But we know that if you want to have people get along with you, you got to look for similarities. That's what negotiation is all about, is meeting on common ground, similarities. So there's natural differences that we notice, and we have to get past those differences and get into what is similar to get into people's minds in a friendly way, so to speak. So when you're very different and people hate you for it, they explain, this is what you do. First, you get your foot in the door by being as similar as possible. And then, and only then, when your one little difference is finally accepted, you can start dragging in the other peculiarities one by one. You hammer in the wedge, narrow end first. So you try to create a gap, you try to create a wedge, but you first go in similarities, and then once that's accepted, that's what they talked about marijuana, a gateway drug, and everybody's like, freaking marijuana is a gateway drug. No way, it doesn't cause you to do cocaine. Well, a lot of drug dealers sold marijuana, but they also had access to cocaine and different things like that. And the deal was, it was a psychological pathway that you're not supposed to do this. This is not good for you. Again, the beliefs back then, now we're finding out something totally different about marijuana than what we thought back then. But they called it a gateway because once you open the gateway and said, you know what, screw it, I'm not going to believe what my parents or society or my teachers say that this is bad, I'm going to give it a try. And then they give it a try and find out, wow, this is kind of fun and I'm having a good time with it. And then when the next guy comes, if he had first tried to sell you heroin or cocaine, you go, no way, get away from me. There's no way you're going to. But progressively, now you do the marijuana and just go, well, they told you that about marijuana, didn't they? And here's some cocaine and some heroin. It's really not that. And people say, no, stay away from it. It's really, really bad. And then they try the cocaine and heroin and they feel better than they've ever felt in their life. Well, they didn't tell them the truth. They didn't tell them about that good part. They only told them about the bad part. So now they think you're lying to them again. And so they're going, what else you got? What else you got? So that's the gateway in. And this is what they're saying, is to say, look, yeah, you might be a cocaine or a heroin addict, but don't tell them that. Just say, no, I just smoke marijuana, and you get them to do marijuana. And once they accept that, they're going to be more apt to accept you that you're a cocaine addict and a heroin addict too. Don't think it's true? Wake up. So it says, when your one little difference is finally accepted, you can start dragging in your other peculiarities one by one. This is how it's done. You remember the movie Dances with Wolves? When the American government sent out people, who did they send? They send out nasty people? No, Dan says, well, they send out the best. They send out good guys, really good guys, and they negotiated with these Indians. But the bad guys back in Washington didn't have any intent on following through with those negotiations. They just needed to disarm and to have the Indians prepared and believe that this is who the white man really was, these negotiators, the best in the field. This is who they really are. But did we follow through? No. If you watch towards the end of the movie, you see how disappointed and how angry the guys that were initially negotiating, because they thought they were negotiating in good faith. But no, the guys that sent them out there, that was their wedge. Drive their wedge in, and then the other peculiarities come. And that's basically how they silently took over the American Indian. Yeah, at first there was wars and everything like that. It wasn't too good, but they found out through negotiation they could make that work. And I don't want to go too far into that because that's not the subject matter here, but you're getting the point. You hammer in the wedge, narrow and first. As the saying goes, allow the camel's nose beneath your tent, and his whole body will soon follow. So you just get the camel's nose in there just a little bit. It's a saying, and it's very accurate. Camel's nose. New York State Thruway, I remember that. In 1955, I wasn't alive, but it started in 55, and they said, we're going to make it a toll road. Everybody, no. It's only going to be for 20 years, and once it's paid for, it's done. Social Security, it's only going to be used as a number for your Social Security. Anybody else that uses it is $10,000 fine, 10 years in prison. Oh, okay, that's fair enough. Never to be used for anything but Social Security. Do you ever use your Social Security number for anything else anymore now? New York State Thruways, 1975 came, let's extend it for 10 years. And we're going to raise the rates a little bit, and we're going to take this and we're going to build a brand new thruway and make it better and everything. 95 came. It's 2015. It's permanent now, and the rates are higher than ever. IRS tax, 1943, 44, victory tax. Yeah, 2013 or 1913, it was for the richest 1%, but then by the time of World War II, they called it the voluntary tax. And the victory tax, bring our boys back, get them employed, get our country back going again and everything like that. It's only going to be going for a few years. How many years has it been? So that's the camel's nose in the tent. And what we're doing here is that they get the camel's nose in the tent. It's not necessarily the gay marriage aspect of it, but the gays will take advantage of the radical gays, and they will use it to go after more bakeries, more pizza shops, not because these people sell them pizza. They sell them cake. But they say, you got to cater it. You got to go to the event and stand there. Okay, yeah. So you're going to be at an event where maybe some sadomasochistic stuff might occur, or just against your beliefs. No, I'll sell you the cakes. I'll sell you the pizzas. You take them to the party yourself. I'm not going to cater it. It's against my conscience. I wouldn't want a gay person to have to go to a white supremacist meeting and have to stand there and gently serve these people while they're being made fun of or hated. No way. Say no. I'm looking at it one side of the equation. I want them to have that perfect right to say no when somebody comes in there. If people that are killing gays, wants to come in and have an ISIS cake made like Walmart did, they wouldn't make a Confederate flag cake, but they made a ISIS cake, no problem at all. And they're executing gays, and the gay baker says, no, I'm not making that. I'm like, God bless you. No, I wouldn't make it either. I'll help you move the guy out onto the street. But I don't want it the other way around. If a Christian, hold on, my phone's ringing. Let me turn that off. Okay, that's a good friend of mine who has a lot of gay friends calling me, and I'm sure he wants to talk about this stuff. We are in the field of helping people, and I don't care who you are. If you want help, I'm going to help you, and you're going to get just as much if you're gay as if you're Christian. So, anyways, I kind of forgot where I was at. I'll keep rolling. I'm sure I'll come back around it. I also just got an invite to go on a radio show and talk about this from the podcast. So, all right. This is interesting. A little phone break there. So, as the saying goes, the camel's nose beneath the tent, and his whole body will soon follow. So humans are very vulnerable to this. Get in the door, pay Patriot Act's only going for 10 years. It's only going for 10 yees. Yeah. NSA is only going to take this much information. We're only going to use it for this. We're only going to do this. We're only going to do that. BS. BS. It's just to get them. It's just to get you to say yes. And once you say yes, that will keep you occupied and busy. So your bits, 7 plus or minus 2 bits, are all taken up with other stuff in the world every day. And we're just going to, behind the scenes, do what we want to do with that law that you said okay with, but you had no idea what the real extent of what you said okay to. So in other words, the sadomasochists, the leather fetishes, the cross-dressers, the transgenders, this is 2005, 10 years ago, and other particular members of the homosexuality community need to keep away from the tent and out of sight while the sales jobs is underway. Later, once the camel is safely inside, there will be room for all. So what am I reading today? Who's coming up next? The pedophiles. The Book of Psychiatry put it in there with homosexuality and said, pedophilia really is just a sexual proclivity, like people that want to marry more than one person, like gayness, and now they're wanting the Rico Whites because this is a sexual thing. So what falls under the paradigm of sexual identity? People that like to have sex with animals, people that like to have peculiar sex, they are now a protected status, and if you don't like that and you speak out against it, you could be sued, lose your job, be called a bigot. So it's, how deep does this tunnel go? How deep does the rabbit hole go with this one here? Rondo explains Kirk and Madson's techniques of desensitization, jamming, and conversion this way. Okay, so here's the brunt of the technology. This is how it works, okay? Desensitization is described as inundating the public in a continuous flood of gay-related advertising, presented in the least offensive fashion possible. So we got gay ads or ambiguous ads. Well, maybe that's a gay guy or not. We got all kinds of gays coming on shows that are funny, that are humorous, that are kind, that are victims. We've got, I don't know how else to say it. Gays are just amazing at decorating and artwork. Many people that I know that are gay, they're just amazing artists, but they're also, I know some that aren't that neat, but most of them that I know are extremely neat people, and they know how to design very well their houses. And then you go inside and it's like, wow, this is gorgeous, fantastic. So we have we've been inundated. So this is the thing. This is part of the deal, is the nice side, the similar side, the part we go like, wow, that's a great human being. He's funny. She's funny. Continuous flood of gay-related advertising presented in the least offensive fashion possible. If straights can shut off the shower, if straights can't shut off the shower, which means they're going to keep the shower on, they're going to get wet, you're going to get it one way or the other, they may at least eventually get used to being wet. That's the adaptability thing. We say, I'll never put up with that, but if you get enough of it, that's what happens in the Army. That's when they brainwash you in the Army. Yeah, they tell you what they're going to do ahead of time. You go, and there's no way. But once they get you in there and they get you doing things, they'll get you to do all kinds of things that you didn't think you were going to do. So you get wet, but you get used to being wet, as they put it. But the activists did not mean advertising in the usual marketing context, but rather quite a different approach. The main thing is to talk about gayness until the issue becomes thoroughly tiresome. Adapting, wear you out, accept it, forget about it. Squeaky wheel gets the oil. They added, seek desensitization and nothing more. If you get the straights to think homosexuality is just another thing. Oh, yeah, I got the right page. Meriting no more than a shrug of the shoulder, then your battle for legal and social rights is virtually won. The planned hegemony, and you know what? I was going to look that word up, and I'm not sure what that means right now, so I am going to look that up really quick so I can give you the meaning so you don't have to go look it up. Okay, I got a book in one hand. Hegemony. I'm not here. Let's hear what it sounds like. This is from Google.
Hegemony.
Hegemony. Okay, let's hear that again.
Hegemony.
Hegemony. Leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. Leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. One more time.
Hegemony.
Hegemony. Okay. So now if I get, the planned hegemony, domination over one group, is a variant of the type that Michael Warren describes in Seeing Through the Media, where it is not raw overt coercion, it is one group's covert orchestration of compliance by another group through structuring the consciousness of the second group. Structuring the consciousness of others. If that phraseology is uncomfortably reminiscent of various mind control and brainwashing tales you have heard over the years, don't be surprised. Manipulating the emotions and thereby restructuring the thoughts and beliefs of large numbers of people is what modern marketing is all about. Jamming, which is the second tenet, there's three tenets. Jamming, explains Rondeau, is psychological terrorism meant to silence expression of or even support for dissenting opinion. And we're going to talk about somebody, whether you like her or not. Let's just pay attention to what was done to her and what the result of that was. This is back in 2005, so this probably happened back in 2003, well, maybe 98 or something. It's coming up. Okay, radio counselor and psychologist Dr. Laura Schlesinger experienced big-time jamming during the run-up to her planned television show. Outraged over a single comment critical of homosexuals she made on her radio program, activists launched a massive intimidation campaign against the television program's advertisers. As a result, the new show was stillborn. But perhaps the highest profile example of jamming occurred after the 1998 murder of University of Wyoming freshman Matthew Shepard. Lured from a bar, robbed, and savagely beaten by two men, Shepard died 5 days later of head injuries. It's a tragedy. In the frenzied saturation media coverage that followed, the press, now remember Bing Crosby with the eclipse, taking advantage of it. The press and homosexual activists singled out conservative Christians as having created a climate of anti-gay hate. Nasty stuff. In which such a brutal act could happen. Remember what I told you about Roe v. Wade? That it never happened? Okay, so people have seen the movie of Matthew Shepard, so it had to have happened. We saw it. We saw the movie. These are facts, right? No, she wasn't pregnant. NBC Today show took the lead, focusing on a Christian ad campaign running at the time that offered to help homosexuals change their orientation. Do you know they're outlawing that in America now? You can't talk about that. This is taking away free speech. If you talk about the possibility of being able to convert a gay person to a straight person, even if the gay person wants it, it's now becoming against the law in America. You can't talk about it. Reporter David Gregory narrated the ads were controversial for portraying gays and lesbians as sinners who had made poor choices despite the growing belief that homosexuality may be genetic. Still don't know. They say it's genetic. No. Have the ads fostered a climate of anti-gay hate that led to the incident and the killing of Matthew Shepard? So already we got to go after the God part of the equation. We got to go after Christians. So anything and everything that happens that's bad, how do we narrate a story and make a connection, as crazy as it is, to make that? Because sooner or later, like Pavlov's dog, you're going to pair up food with saliva drooling from the dog's mouth, and then you can just blow a whistle or ring a bell, and you don't even have to bring in food, and just the salivation from the dog still happens. So you associate enough times that Christians are behind all this gay hate. You notice they're not talking about Muslims throwing people off buildings. It's Christians. Why? Because it doesn't work for the agenda. It's not that they don't want to talk about it and they like what's going on. They don't. But it interferes with the agenda of taking Christians out of power and letting them become gods, letting them determine what's right and wrong because they feel like they know what's right and wrong. And again, it's not all the gays. I'm generalizing and I'm talking specifically at the top. And I think it's just as bad for what they're doing, the McConnells and the Bonners and Paul Ryan, my namesake, who I used to like, but now when he says to like Nancy Pelosi, we'll find out what's in the bill after it's done. Well, who does know what the bill is? Who wrote the bill? If none of them have read it and they're going to pass it, who are they believing? Who has more power than them? Who's the one that's telling them to pass this bill without reading it and sell it to the American public? What the hell do they have on these people that they're able to do this kind of stuff? Come on, man, woman. So they're connecting this. They're trying to make the stimulus and response. Christians, gay suffering. Christians, gay suffering. Christians, gay suffering. Gay rights activists say the ads convey a message that gay people are defective. And in the now infamous interview today, Katie Couric asked Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, some gay rights activists have said that some conservative political organizations like the Christian Coalition, the Family Research Council, and Focus on the Family, now we're going to not just say Christians, we're going to get more specific because what happened with the bell was that they realized that they just didn't ring the bell, but if they had another background noise or a white lab coat, that they could anchor it to all different kinds of things. Once they had the bell, then they could anchor it to a white lab coat. Then they could stop the bell, and the white lab coat still created the salivation response. And we're animals like that. We work the same way. So there's all kinds of levels that this can go to that they can associate and reassociate once they have it there and take that anger. They can take it from women's rights. They can take it to gay rights. They can take it to they can continue to get you to move that feeling, that emotion that you will then justify the logic with into whatever agenda they want. Once they have you, you're trapped. They can continue to move the argument around, and there's nothing that's going to ground you with it. But here's Katie Couric going on. Now she's going to be specific about the anchoring. Like the Christian Coalition, the Family Research Council, and Focus on the Family are contributing to this anti-homosexual atmosphere and have an ad campaign saying, if you're homosexual, you can change your orientation. This prompts people to say, if I met someone who's homosexual, I'm going to take action and try to convince them or try to harm them. Try to convince them to change or harm them. Do you believe that such groups are contributing to this climate? So when did you stop being a wife abuser? I never abused my wife. But it doesn't matter now. The frame is, when did you stop being a wife abuser? Whether you did or not, you're not out of it. The frame is, in a person's mind, they anchor and they associate wife abuser with you, with your face. It's nasty business. Prove that you weren't a wife abuser. How do I prove a negative like that? I can't. So it's a setup question, sheer setup question. Consciously or not, the media were following Kirk and Madsen's playbook. Consciously or not, consciously, I will put that in there. The media was following Kirk and Madsen's playbook to the letter, discrediting anyone who disagreed with the homosexual agenda by associating them with low-life murderers. The people that killed. Okay, so the damage is done, whether they did it or not. You take the emotion and the energy, and if you find out later that it's not true, it doesn't matter. The anchor has been set. People don't go in and say, okay, I'm going to go back to that anchor. Doom, I'm going to release it. Okay, let it go. I made a mistake there. Sorry, guys. No. What they will do is there's a part of the brain, if I hypnotize somebody, and I've told you this before, and make them take their shoes and socks off while they're in trance, and then wake them up and say it's time to go, and they get up and they start to put their shoes and socks off, and there's a funny look that comes across their face, and they start to put them on, and I say, what's the matter? Well, I'm just putting my shoes back on and socks back on. Well, why'd you take them off? And this is where the funniest thing happens. My foot itched really bad, or I was sweating, or I felt there was a bug in there. The brain will come up with all kinds of reasonings and excuses as to why they did it, because they don't know why they did it. And an honest answer might be, I don't know why. I kind of remember you telling me to take them off. Yep, okay, that person is going to be more towards control of who they are. But people can't admit that they're wrong. So they take advantage of this. People can't admit that I made a mistake. So they take advantage of this. So even if they did make a mistake and Roe v. Wade didn't happen, that girl wasn't pregnant, too bad. We still believe it. Too bad the anchors are still in there and they've been used for all different kinds of things. Same thing with Katie Couric. Whether Matthew Shepard was killed because he was a homosexual or just two guys out to rob him, didn't even know he was gay, the damage is done. The anchor has been set and it can now be used and transferred. It's nasty business. Nasty business. It's real good if you're helping people. When I'm doing coaching and I'm doing workshops or seminars, it's real good to help people perform better, get past all kinds of crap in their life. It's wonderful. But when it's not used in the proper way, when it's used for nefarious reasons to get what they want without considering the benefits to other people, it's not nice. Let's see, where was I? Okay, I'm going to read that part again. Consciously or not, the media were following Kirk and Madsen's playbook to the letter, discrediting anyone who disagreed with the homosexual agenda by associating them with low-life murderers. In reality, none of the Christian groups smeared by NBC had ever condoned mistreatment of homosexuals. Never. In fact, they had explicitly condemned it. They'd outright condemned it. But it doesn't matter if people don't have the data and they don't know that. If you frame it in a certain way, you get them all emotional. They stop searching for the data and they will justify it. And even later, if they find out that they were wrong, that part of the brain that I told you about will start to justify, well, I felt like this way anyways, whatever. And they're back in the pattern and they're very usable for the next propaganda that comes their way. That's why, again, you look at what's going on with the Republicans and the Libertarians and people middle of the road, and then you look at the lockstep liberal left. They don't care. They don't care. They are associated. They're in a trap. And they don't care if it's Hillary Clinton. They don't care if she's murdered people, killed people. I'm not saying she's done any of that, but she could be Charles Manson. But now they're associated. When Patty Hearst, whose grandfather was William Randolph Hearst, was with the Symbionese SLA, Symbionese Liberation Army. There's a thing called Stockholm Syndrome. She fell in love with her captors. It's something that's a protective mechanism of the brain. You start to have association and love your captors so they don't kill you, because it's hard to kill somebody that you love. So they do this and force the captors to fall, and they become one of them and willing to go out and actually do bank robberies for that. And they know about this part too in the brain and how it works. And she justified it. And some of the boys that came back from Korea that were brainwashed, they justified it too. And some of them were just honest and saying, I didn't believe I was saying it. There's a part of me that's going, are you really saying this? Do you really? But there was another part of me that was just going along with it. So they take parts of you, parts of your belief system, and through hypnosis, you can get people to do stuff with parts. Watch stage hypnosis and how they do things up there and how they get people to do things they swear they'd never do. My grandmother told me, she's still alive, 97 years old, going to be in September, and her sister, this is in England when they were growing up, this is crazy. I don't believe in this. The Liverpool accent. No, excuse me, they were from Yorkshire, Todmorden area, and next thing you know, she goes, I'll go up there, I'll show them. And she gets up there, and my grandmother said, you wouldn't believe the stuff she did. And then when she came back, my grandmother was trying to tell her, she goes, you're a liar. I would never do so. She goes, you wouldn't believe the stuff you did up on stage. And if you know my aunt, who was hilarious, and hear my grandmother tell the story, it's really funny, because when she got serious about stuff, she was funny in the sense, but she was really serious and get angry. My grandmother said to the day she died, she never believed that happened. She goes, but I watched it. I watched everything happen. So there's a lot of things happening in us as human beings, and we think from the knowledge of being inside our bodies, we know who we are, but when we start to step out and look at it as patterns, look at it as in a scientific approach or semi-scientific, we start to see that we're very vulnerable to this stuff. So, the Christian groups smeared by NBC never condoned mistreatment of homosexuals. In fact, they had explicitly condemned it, as if to add even more shame to the whole hog jamming of Christians after the Shepard murder. In 2004, a comprehensive new investigation by ABC News 2020 2004, Matthew Shepard was killed in 1998. How long? 5 years worth of anchors, movie about Matthew Shepard, all that anger. How can you take that? What other things could that be attached to and really bring up the anger and the hatred for Christians? But in 2004, concluded that homosexuality very likely was not a factor in Shepard's murder, but rather Shepard had been targeted for his money. So much for desensitization and jamming. But what about conversion? Here, Kirk and Mattson announce definitively, I'm going to announce definitively, it's time to take another drink of Mount Shasta water as my throat is getting parched. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go look for a cough drop real quick. Oh, that water's so good. Okay, I'm back, got some cough drops, had some water, and we're just about on an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this one and go right into the next one, keep reading. We got about 10 pages left and a lot of important points, and I'll pick up right where I left off. So we'll see you in a minute.